We arrived in Zurich in the late afternoon at our hotel and were greeted by this. And all I could think of was either she's the courageous shopper, or maybe she's Lot's wife and turned around one too many times for that last bargain. Our Globus guide led us on a walking tour of downtown Zurich. It was a cold and dreary day, as you can see. There was a reward at the end, this delicious bakery and candy shop. After a short bus ride, we arrived in Interlaken. We stayed in what had to be the ugliest building in town. Nice rooms though. The next morning we traveled to this natural wonder where the melting glacial ice has carved out a path through the mountain. The inventive Swiss engineers have built pathways inside the mountain to allow people to enjoy this amazing sight. Just take a look at this. We got a bit wet, but it was worth it. Next, it was on to the Emmentaler cheese factory and store, where this lovely young lady dazzled us with her bright smile and sparkling personality. You heard of the expression watching grass grow or paint dry. Now I can add cheese aging. You could buy cheeses that were aged for different months, as you can see the months there. Or all kinds of wursts, the Senwurst, and I don't know what kind of wurst is. But these were the worst wursts. I don't know, use your imagination. The Jungfrau, actually the Jungfrau Joch, is the highest train station in Europe, and there's a system of trains that take you up there, cog railways mostly, and this is a map of them. So it's really quite fantastic how they do this. Well, I've heard of the last gas station before the Jungfrau, not the last sex shop. So we went in there. Rhine is one of the stations on the way. It means small watershed, but I think it means small behind. now we're back in Interlaken. It's a beautiful little town. We took a walk around. There's a park and some beautiful views of the Jungfrau Loch. We were way up there. That's where we were. Amazing. And from our hotel window, we got a bird's eye view of the paragliders. This is the town of Brienz. Has a street that was once awarded the most beautiful street in Europe. I don't know. But it has some beautiful wood carvings and cowbells and flowers and laundry. It was very pretty. And wood piles, which was a portent of things to come. Later we went to the wood carving museum, where the director of the museum had a wonderful tale to tell.
Listen, you Brienz, Mark has no business out in the bush. Yeah, he's got some muscles back there, Mr. Nike. Let Nike go and get the wood. Somebody handy with a saw, go cut the stuff out. What was your name? Mark. Mark. Right, he wants 6 bears, 3 with the head to the right, 3 head to the left. Let somebody else do the preliminary work. Get some lesser talents. You're getting very good, but you're not quite at his level. So you pre-carve the animals, okay? And then Mark will produce a bear. He studied the anatomy. He studied, especially interested in bears, because that was the fiercest, biggest carnivore here in Brienz. What he has in Switzerland, what Mark is a bit, well, it's a bit difficult to get along with at times.
How'd you know? 50 years.
And he's got no patience. Yeah, I know bears have gazillions of hairs, but I'm not going. He'd take the 6 bears, give it to somebody else that did nothing but carve one hair after another for days and weeks on end. Sir, you're specialized in carving hair, not just for Mark.
Well, next it was on to the open-air museum of Ballenberg, where they collected centuries-old buildings from all over Switzerland. You can see how people used to live. Get off my merry-go-round, you ragamuffins! One thing I did notice was that there were lots of piles of wood all around. Piles of wood here, piles of wood there. Everywhere. And this one, a shopping cart made out of wood to hold more piles of wood. See, even the wheels. This was an optional excursion that we did, but we're really glad we did it. It was a load of fun. Well, dinner started with fondue and ended with dessert, but we had so many drinks I can't remember what happened in between. The next morning we went on a walking tour of Lucerne, and this is a lion monument which is dedicated to the Swiss guards who protected the royal house of France during the French Revolution. Then we walked over this famous covered chapel bridge. It's pretty old. So lots of interesting views, and then we visited the Jesuit church on the other side of the water. the buildings have these ornate paintings and sculptures and metal sculptures. And this must be from the Salvatore Dali School of Building Painting. And of course, I never miss out on an opportunity to take some pictures of interesting signs. In the afternoon, we took this delightful walk along the lake to the Transportation Museum, or the Verkehrshaus der Schweizer, something like that. This is interesting. This is the face of a tunnel drilling machine. Look at the size of that. I guess the Swiss don't know too much about child labor laws.
Perhaps the only advantage for letting her drive.
Maybe they found Waldo. We arrived early in Basel. Isn't that a swank docking area? Look at how pretty that is. So we took a walk into town, which is has markings on the sidewalk to guide you, and then you buy a ticket from this machine, and then you get on a tram, and it takes you into town. We did a little walking around, had some gelato, did not buy any teas, did not do any post telegraphs and telephones, and noticed some interesting signs again, and then we just went back to the ship. Colmar is the picture-perfect Alsace little town. I'm sure you've seen many paintings and pictures of it. This is not a Jewish star. This indicates it was a brewery. This is the little street of tanners, the Tannery Street, and I've noticed all the buildings were tan. No color. Look at that. next morning we boarded this sightseeing boat and took a canal ride into Strasbourg. In the afternoon, we had a lovely tour of the wine country there and of this brewery, a winery, and we visited the cellars and we had a delightful wine tasting at the end. This is the town square. We did some shopping and actually bought a Bavarian cuckoo clock. As perhaps you can tell by the song, we are now in Mainz, Germany, to visit the Gutenberg Museum.
In Mainz am schönen Rhein, da hab ich's wie alle gemacht, da schmeckt der Wein so gut.
Well, that was a quick visit. Now we're in Rudesheim to visit the incredible Mechanical Music Museum. And the pièce de résistance, I think, is this gizmo.
This is 1909? Oh my God.
der Drosselgast, da singt ein Brüderstrauß. Da trinkt man früh bis abends spät, die Gläser fleißig auf. Da geht der Wein im Kreis herum, da singet man im Chor. Wie's an der Wand geschrieben steht, im Bass und im Tenor. Rüdesheimer Wein, blonde Mägdelein, sind des Lebens Elixier, drum Freund, ich rate dir, lieb dein Leben lang.
This was billed as an afternoon cruise down the romantic Rhine. You be the judge.
Warum ist es am Rhein so schön? Warum ist es am Rhein so schön? Am Rhein so schön.
We were given a walking tour of beautiful Koblenz later that day. This is a building, I don't remember what, but there's a little man on top that winks every hour. This is the Spitting Boy, a symbol of the town, and they put this plate on the ground just so you'd be curious to look at it and then get spit on by this guy. Now we're in Cologne, another walking tour. This is a monument to, I think it's to World War II, with this line kind of disappears off into the east. Modern train station. They say the governor of the town put up this statue that sticks out his tongue every hour at the populace, so they got even with him and mooned him. Later, Barbara and I meandered around Cologne, and we found this bridge loaded with love locks. I can't imagine how this bridge stays up with all those locks. That's the cathedral in the background. A little bit of last-minute shopping. And aren't we glad that we made this week? It's push-up week. How about that? And then it was goodbye to some of the friends that we made on the Avalon Panorama. And one final nice dinner and dessert, and then the final sundown on the ship. This really was a very interesting hotel. That's not bricks, that's carpeting. And the rooms are very vertical. Every inch of space was used. You had a sleeping loft that could be closed off at night. The steps pulled out, so you can get up there, and they had all interesting signs. I like signs. Upstairs there was a whole rooftop restaurant and lounge and sitting areas. I just thought I'd show you some of the interesting museums and stores they have in Amsterdam. This is the Portuguese Synagogue and Jewish Heritage Museum, which is part of a complex there. It also includes a Holocaust Museum, and we spent some time there. Very interesting. We really got our steps in Amsterdam. So here's some scenes from this beautiful city. These hoists are required because the stairways are so narrow we can't get things up the stairs. This is the Van Gogh Museum, great museum. And this is the famous Rijks Art Museum, if you're into that. This machine that you'll see is going over this painting to assess its condition and to see what's actually underneath the paint. Someone asked one of the docents nearby what this was, and he said, "It's exactly what you think it is." This was in a nearby store window. The next morning, it's breakfast in this bakery slash coffee shop. And then more walking. We happened to come upon a rehearsal for a concert that this group was giving, and we later stayed for much of the regular concert. And some of us actually stayed awake for it. But we did take a romantic evening cruise to end our journey.